First story. This happened not too long ago, although not too crazy definitely had me freaking out after it occurred. Probably did not help that I frequent this sub often. I had just moved to a new apartment building, and it was my first time living alone. It was actually my first day, and I had moved my stuff in and headed to school, and was coming home for the evening. My parking is in an underground basement, which was scary as is for the first few days, so I would always leave my car and book it to the elevator so I could GTFO. As I stood waiting, it was taking quite a while for the elevator to come down, and I could hear it beeping on the different floors it was stopping at. Once it finally arrived, the doors opened, and there was a tall guy that was clearly disheveled on something. The minute I made eye contact with him, my senses went off, and I got the most uneasy feeling. I hesitated, as I was on the last floor, so whenever someone was in the elevator, they were always getting out, and I waited for him to do the same. Instead, he just stood there staring at me, and I managed to blurt out, "Are you going up?" He mumbled some sort of, "Yeah." Alarm bells were going off, but I thought maybe I was overthinking, so I awkwardly walked in and stood against the wall as far as I could from him. I asked him what floor, as there was no floor selected, and he stuttered between numbers, and happened to say the same floor I was getting off on, which scared me even more. I tried to not panic, but as soon as I entered, I tried to keep my gaze down, but he was just facing and staring at me with the most uncomfortable look in his eyes. The minute the elevator started going up, he started to shuffle and was moving towards me when it ended up stopping on the first floor on the lobby. I was in the left corner near the doors, and he was basically right in front of the door, stepping towards me when the doors opened. I was honestly freaking the actual hell out, and as soon as the door slid open, I scooched out and went straight out the doors onto the main street. I stood there for a few minutes with my heart pounding because of how scared I was, and I remember him staring at me, confused for a minute, and then he stayed back in the elevator as the doors closed. I remember there were two guys standing by in the lobby who witnessed the whole thing, and I nervously laughed that I was just creeped out by a guy in the elevator. I believe they were just DoorDashers, so they just stared at me and were like, "Okay, Elamao." I ended up taking the stairs up and was scared out of my mind. I was praying he was just someone's guest, hence why he was so confused and weird. My dad came to visit me the very next day, and I was telling him how badly that guy freaked me out, and that same night, we ran into him again. He was waiting for the elevator, and the minute I saw him, I told my dad and made him take the stairs with me again. Thank God I haven't seen him again, so I'm really hoping he was a guest, but if I ever see an elevator with just one dude in it, I do not take the risk. Lol. May have just been me overthinking, but something was not right with him. Second story. I used to be an assistant martial arts teacher at a school that taught kids aged 5 to 18. It was located on a military base, so we had a variety of students who had traveled around the world and had experienced more than most kids their age. Different personalities, open minds, and a willingness to explore were common traits among the children. There was one little girl who possessed a completely different trait. I was 20 years old at the time, and this girl, let's call her Olivia, was around 10 years old. She had black hair, a fair complexion, and was always smiling. She became quite attached to me and always found ways to get my attention. Sometimes she would run up to me, playfully hit me, and then run away giggling. Other times, she would misbehave in class out of spite just to gain my attention. Overall, she seemed like a normal young girl, discovering herself and the world around her. That's what anyone would assume. However, one day I noticed that Olivia began acting strangely, unlike her usual self. She appeared heartbroken about something, looking tired, yet antsy and nervous. I asked her if she was okay, but she simply replied with a yes and didn't elaborate. I would have raised my concerns with her parents, but they were never present. As the days went by, Olivia continued to appear downcast and sad. Then, one afternoon after class, she ran up to me with her familiar smile on her face, the one that always made me smile too. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "What is this?" I asked, starting to unfold it. "I drew it for you. Olivia said with a smile, giggling. As soon as I saw what she had drawn, shock instantly coursed through me, leaving me at a loss for words. A chill ran up my spine, and my hands trembled. It was a crude drawing of me dressed in my martial arts uniform, with Olivia depicted stabbing me with a kitchen knife. Multiple stab wounds on my body were oozing blood, which also covered Olivia and the knife she held. Strangely, both of us were smiling in the drawing. "It's me killing you," Olivia exclaimed, laughing. I quickly folded up the drawing and returned it to her. "Thank you, Olivia, but you can keep it," I said, my voice flat, still in a state of shock. I didn't see her after that afternoon. She had quit the class. Deep down, I felt relieved that she had decided to quit. Even though Olivia had left, her impact remained. I was left grappling with unease that refused to subside. The image of her drawing was etched into my mind, an eerie reminder of the complex emotions children can harbor. I don't know where Olivia may be in life now. She would be the age I was at the time she handed me that drawing. I hope she's a healthy young woman, mentally sound and living a good life. I only hope that the drawing was a single occurrence with Olivia, and no one else had to experience such a disturbing situation like I did that afternoon. Third story. About 3 years ago, when I was 18, I worked as a waiter in a restaurant in the mall. I am very introverted, but it never affected my relationship with my customers, but speaking to people I wasn't serving gave me major butterflies. I had just finished my shift around 17 and was walking out, when I noticed a woman who looked in pain holding her stomach was looking at me. I had to walk past her to get to the exit, and I was trying to avoid her because I was not looking for conversation, and I hated when people asked for money. I know it is selfish, but I worked really hard for the little money the customers tipped me that day. I maneuvered my way around the people, but she called out to me. I acted like I didn't hear her and moved faster. Eventually, she ran to me and grabbed my arm, crying, "Please, please, brother, I got children and I got cancer of the tummy." She lifted up her dirty shirt and showed me a large surgery wound across her stomach. I told her I didn't have anything but. She continued to badger me. Eventually, I just ran to the stairs and went upstairs and saw her chasing, but I was way more faster. She slowed down at the second case to catch her breath, and I turned in to get off at the 3rd floor where she could not see me. I took the elevator next to the stairs back to the 1st floor so I could get to the exit. Eventually, I got to the bus stop and was on my way home. When I got off at my stop, I went the corner shop to get a bread. At the end of the road, I saw the woman from the mall and her boyfriend. They must have definitely seen me, even though I made an effort to take a longer way home so they wouldn't have seen me. Around 19:00, I get a knock at my gate. I live in a house that has 2 slide gates in front of the main entrance. I looked out of the window, and to my horror, I saw the woman and her boyfriend. I stayed quiet and hoped they'd just go away, but they stayed outside my house for 2 hours. Until my parents arrived. They begged my parents for money or food to feed their kids. My father found it weird that they were there at 21, so he told them we didn't have and to get away from the house before they called the police. Surprisingly, they left without any hassle. I told my parents that these people were begging me for money at the mall and that they followed me home, stayed outside the house for 2 hours. We never saw them again after that day. Fourth story. This scene happened when I was 21, yo. It is in a smaller town outside of a huge city in the Midwest. This was 1981. I worked at fast food and they stayed open until 3 a.m. My then husband worked for a bowling alley as a manager and he was never off before 2 a.m. I was expecting my first child and business was slow, so I was sent home about 1 a.m. In the town we lived in, there was a large private girls' college. Women were being warned to lock their car doors because 2 males were still on the loose that were targeting women around my age. They were sometimes following them home and attacking or forcing a woman alone late at night off the road. The men were raping and killing the woman. They had killed 3 women by this point. 2 of the women were found on deserted roads and 1 in her apartment. There was no description of these men or what kind of vehicle they drove. I left work, climbed into my car, locked my doors, and started for home. The hair on the back of my head stood up on end, and my gut feeling told me something was very wrong. I figured out that I was being followed home. I took several turns around town, trying to shake this car, but to no avail. The advice given was that if you thought you were being followed, to drive to the police station. We had recently moved to this area, so I had no idea where the police station was. I was terrified, panicked, and couldn't think what to do. This was in the days no cell phones, but the payphones were made in different areas where you could drive up to them, sit in the driver's seat, put your window down, and the payphones had a longer cord to enable you to stay in your car and talk. You still had to deposit money in order to talk, even you were calling 911. I thought briefly about trying to get to one of these phones, but I was too scared and didn't think I could have a coin ready in time before these men could have time to approach me. My parents lived about 4 streets over from where I lived, and I decided the safest decision was to try to make it to my parents' house. I was still being followed when I got to my parents' house. There was a short block you could go around by my parents, and I went around this block about 3 times. And every time I did, I honked the horn. You would have thought laying on the horn would have discouraged these creeps from continuing to follow me, but it had no effect. If anything, they moved in closer behind me. I pulled into their driveway, and these creepers pulled right in. Behind me turned their lights off, and I heard their doors open and shut. I was beyond terror at this point. They were out of their car, one coming up on one side and one on the other. My parents' house was a split level, and you pulled up in front of a double-car garage. In order to get in the house, you had to go in through garage door or front door, and front door was to left of driveway about 2 car lengths away plus a set of steps. I laid on the horn again. They still kept coming. My dad, who is retired military, oftentimes stayed up late at night watching TV. Thank God he did this night. All of a sudden, he turned the porch light on and burst out the front door. He assessed the situation instantly and started yelling at these creeps to get the fess away from my car, all the while barreling down the steps towards them. At first, they didn't retreat very fast, but must have thought better. My dad is very big-boned and about 6'4" in. He had a brother that played in college football, and he wore a size 15 EEE shoe. He made it to the front of their car and pounded on the hood of it before they were able to burn rubber reversing out of the driveway. While he was unable to get a license number because they didn't have a front plate, he was able to describe them and give make and model to police. Police told me how fortunate I was that my dad had realized what a dire situation I was in. I still get chills thinking back to that night. I remember it as if it were yesterday. My dad said he thought he heard a car honk more than once, and then he heard me in the driveway. He had just shut off the TV and was heading for bed when I pulled in. Thank God my dad acted so quickly, or I might not be writing this today. This incident has caused me to be hyper-aware of my surroundings, and I never turn into my driveway without making sure I am not followed. Always be mindful of where you are, and don't walk around with your headphones on or phone pressed to your ear. You never know when you may be an opportunistic moment for someone with ill intentions. Know where your local police station is, and if you ever get chills, something is wrong. Drive into the police station. The police are more than happy to help you out. Better safe than sorry. The police did capture these creeps about 2 weeks later, and they didn't get a 4th victim. They were both on probation for kidnapping and rape, served their time, and decided killing their victims left no witnesses. My dad is still my hero today. His quick actions prevented me from being the 4th victim. And the color, model, and make of car my dad described was the description of what they were driving when they were arrested. 5th story. This happened years ago, but I still think about it pretty often. My 3 little sisters, their dad, and I were standing in the checkout line at the grocery store. My youngest sister couldn't have been much older than a year, so I was 10, and holding her on my hip. A middle-aged woman joined the line behind us. She was trying to get my baby sister's attention over my shoulder, just cooing and baby-talking to her. I figured her an obvious baby lover. So, I turned us towards her slightly, as a polite gesture, only for her to start moving closer and holding out her hands. It was happening so fast I almost couldn't react. I had just enough time to give her a panicked look as she reached out to take her from me, and I shouted, "Excuse me, don't touch her, get away from us." At the same time, my stepdad took a step in between us and this crazy woman, asking her what she thinks she was doing. She just got really sheepish and was trying to laugh it off. Instead of backing up, she made her way past us and then proceeded to try to cut us in line. I think my stepdad would have exploded if not for the cashier giving this lady a glare and waving us forward. She left us alone after that, and it was super awkward, but the whole experience left us all quite shaken. The woman gave me an off vibe from the start, and I'm really not sure what her intentions were. I think she probably just thought that I would allow her to hold my sister for some insane reason, but who knows. I hope you liked the video. Remember to subscribe and leave a like for more videos. Thanks for watching.